Tamika, what were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I think it was a challenging game. They came out and were very organised, very structured, and it was a challenge for us to break them down, which is something that we'll face. And they gave us a lot of respect with the speed that we have in behind. So, yeah, I think it was down to us to try and break them down. And we definitely, I think, as you can see, fought hard throughout the whole 90 minutes.
What did you make of Claire Wheeler's performance? A rare start for Wheeler.
Yeah, I think Wheels did excellent in midfield. As I said, they sat pretty well on a block, and it's always difficult to play through the middle. And playing next to Wheeler, I think she did a great job offering options and also making tackles as well.
Next question.
Obviously, tight turnaround to the next game on Monday. Is that good prep looking ahead to the Olympics, where it's going to be a really tight, busy schedule, lots of travel as well?
Yeah, I think so. It's a good test for us. You don't get too much recovery time in tournament mode, and that's what we need going into Olympics. And if you look at it, you got 7 games, and we want to be able to perform in all 7 of them.
Over 50,000 people here in Adelaide. Matildas don't come here very often. 10,000 people on Hindmarsh the last time. So what do you make of this? It shows how much this program's grown, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing to see everyone that comes out, and not just to see them but to hear them. They're also vocal and getting more and more passionate about football with the round ball. So I think it's excellent for us to see as females and for women's sport in general, and it was an amazing turnout tonight.
Next question.
Mace, can you just tell us a little bit about what Tony asked you guys to do, particularly in that first half, from a tactical sense? It looked like you guys were trying things out. What was the instruction, and how do you think it went?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're always a possession-based team, and we want to play good football. And as I said, they were well structured and very disciplined. So for us, it was trying to play through rounds over and mix up our game and look at how we can break down different opponents. So, yeah, and with a lot of players coming in and rotating through as well, we all kind of needed to get to know each other in different positions and make sure we have that depth.
Any final questions for Tamika? Otherwise, we'll let Tamika depart.
Good job.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tamika.
Enjoy.
Matt,
Thanks,
can you
guys.
please walk Tamika back to the change room? Oh, no, we've got... Tony, what were your thoughts on the game with not long since full time?
Oh, probably going to be a long answer to that one. I didn't want to say anything before the game, but we had a little bit of a challenge coming into this game in the fact that some players that have played in the A-League haven't played football for a very long time going into it, meaning you're not really in season and in form. Some players are in the end of a season and coming in fatigued and tired from travel and from playing, and we needed to find the right balance and not use that as an excuse. And I didn't want to talk about it loud because it can influence players mentally, right? But that's how we felt as coaches. And I think in the first half, for some reason, we actually looked a bit tired, not as aggressive that we can be. I think China won a lot of one-on-one duels. They were more aggressive than we were. I think we played way too slow. When you asked about tactics, I asked them to try to provoke the press and be slow in the start of the build-up to draw them out. But once we break the first line, get a change of tempo, and I think we'd really struggle with that in the first half. And also due to China being extremely well prepared. I said to Ante afterwards, congrats to a very, very impressive performance. I think they were very good tonight. I think they were better than us in terms of the game plan, the aggressiveness. They were extremely well prepared. We did some tactical tweaks in halftime that I think paid off. I think we actually started to dominate them more already before the subs. It's easy to say the subs changed the game, but I actually think we changed the game in halftime. We came out really, really good in the beginning of the second half. It's a mix of looking for answers. I think we had almost 6 different starting players than the most common starting lineup in the World Cup. We wanted to evaluate players for selection, and that also influenced the game a little bit with new relationship on right side, new relationship on left side, new center midfield relationship, like a lot of new things. And I think you could see that as well, that it wasn't as synced and connected as we normally see a Matilda team. And the final thing I want to say is, with the help of the crowd that supported us all the way through, even though we didn't have a great game, we got the support from the fans all the way through, and then that never say die attitude of the players to never ever give up and play until the last second paid off once again. And maybe no coincidence that it's Michelle Heyman there scoring that goal, either being the right spot and the right time. So I think that was important for her and the team.
Vince.
Thanks. Tony, I think we're all a little bit concerned to see Caitlin come off in the second half, not long after she entered the field. Do you know anything about that? It looked like a hamstring concern, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned as well, and I'm looking at myself a little bit here as well, because some of the players, like I said, came in very tired, both mentally and physically, and had a couple of niggles. So the ones that have seen trainings today have seen that a lot of players have done individual stuff, and she's been one of them that hasn't really trained fully until yesterday. We always have long meetings with my SSM team and look at recommending of minutes. Can we protect players? Do we play them? And you know, when something like, it's easy to say afterwards, right? But something like that happens, like, oh, should I really have used her today, or should I let her rest? Like that. That's, you know, as a coach, you always think that way. We played it safe. She felt something, she said. We don't know how serious it is, but she said she felt something. And if that would have been a World Cup game or an Olympic game, I think she would have tried to play on. But at this point, there's no way that we would risk that. So we made a choice to, hey, if she feels even the little, let's take her off to play it safe. And also it was a chance for me to see Sean Fryer, who's been very, very good in training for us. And I actually think she came in and was, you know, a spark. I think she did well. She could even take on even more 1v1s, because her 1v1s is really, really good, and even in trainings. So, but hopefully it's not too serious. But I can say already now that if it's the slightest risk, there's no way I'm going to play a player like that in the second game, because it's all about getting out of this camp without injuries now, preparing for the Olympics as well.
And just with Caitlin, we haven't really had the chance to ask you, like, she obviously came after their season with Arsenal and played that All-Stars match as well. Like, you know, those 3 Australian players on the Arsenal team had a lot of, you know, extra, you know, stuff to get through physically compared to some of the other players in the squad. Were you worried at all when that trip was planned in terms of the physical impact it was going to have on those 3 players?
Yes. But I also understand the why behind it. And I think that's something that we're going to see more in the women's game. We've seen it in the men's game for years now. The off-season trips, you know, the post-season and the pre-season tournament trips and exhibition games. The way the interest is in the women's game, you can understand the why for clubs to do it. And I think it's up to us to learn to handle that. And you know, that we always looked at the well-being of the players, and sometimes we even, you know, looking back to that June window year before the World Cup, we even gave some players off because we knew they're not going to be off for 18 months afterwards, and it was a big criticism of us doing that at that time, but we were one of the first national team to see what was coming and wanted to think a step ahead and really look at well-being here.
And you mentioned how you started much better in the second half. Can you just talk us through the decision of making 5 of your 6 subs at one go and basically bringing in half of your World Cup starting 11 in? Was that always the plan, or do you see something there to make that move?
You always, what we do as coaches is we call it scenario training. So the night before the game, we sit down as a tech staff and put the board up, and it's almost like you're playing chess with pieces, right? And you look at different scenarios, if this happens, if this happens, if this is. And what we said this game is we wanted to try to combine to look at as many players as possible for decision making, but at the same time use the game as preparing with connection and relationship and consistency. So instead of maybe doing a mix where we had 1-2 players starting that normally doesn't start, and then have another 1-2 player and have a mix through 90 minutes, we said let's look at a mix to begin with, and if we get an opportunity to bring a so-called starting lineup, I think that's the wrong word because I normally don't use that, but the ones that normally start into the same time, so we can get some cohesion and connection and work together on those relationships that we've seen before. So it was kind of pre-planned and said maybe if we get an opportunity to do it, we will.
And just you mentioned the crowd as well. Last time the Matildas were here, they were down the road, 10,000 people, 50,000 people here today. You said they drove you home. How great is it to see it grow, not just in the big cities, but all around the country?
I am so happy for these players and even the alumni. I had the privilege to meet them in open training sessions, some of them as well, that have paved the way before this. So this team wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for all the people who've done that, you know, from way back and got it to where it is now. And for me to just be a very small part of that journey and then see where it is now, I'm so happy. But it's also very good to see everything from the open training session to, you know, when we go to the stadium and in the stadium to see how many people have role models to look up to now. And I know for these players that their why is a lot about uniting people, inspire the next generation and leave the game better than it was when they entered it. So I'm very happy for them.
Erin?
Going into the game, Tony, you said there was about 4 positions you were undecided on. Are you any closer, or is it going to come down to the game in Sydney?
I am closer. Without saying any names, I think there were 1 or 2 players that locked the spots tonight, to be honest. I think they did with their performance. But I also want to look at the game with less emotions, because when you coach a game, and you know me being a bit emotional on the sideline at times, I want to make sure I look at a game with less emotions. And the tech staff will have a long night tonight, because we're planning to have some individual meetings at the end of this camp where all the players will be told face-to-face individually whether they're selected or not, and we're always keen on making sure those processes is as professional as possible and thinking about the person more so than the player, because there will be some tough decisions and tough conversations that's going to hurt some feelings, unfortunately, and that's the tough part of this job.
1 or 2 questions. Emma?
I just wanted to ask Tony why you made the choice to start Caitlin Torpey on the left and Charlie Grant on the right, because both of them usually play the other way around from what I've seen.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, because that was one of the talking points we had late last night, or actually afternoon before the lineup meeting, because both of them can play on both sides. Charlotte have played both right, left, and left back. Maybe even more so as a left back, especially when she played in Sweden before she went to Tottenham, but even in Tottenham. Torpey have played on both sides. We even said if we get an opportunity to try them both sides, we will. So in halftime, we swapped the 2 of them because we wanted to evaluate both performances on right and left side. Because if one of them are part of the Olympic squad, if you look at an Ellie and Steph, as you probably understand, is most likely going to start most of the games. But we need to have a backup solution in the outside back position. And if we can only bring 1 more outside back, because most likely we'll bring 3 outside back, that outside back has to be able to play both sides. And therefore we wanted to test both of them, both sides.
Final question.
Gosh, I'm really revealing way too much now.
Final question?
Tony, one of the biggest criticisms of your coaching during the World Cup was, you know, not using the depth of all 23 players, and then tonight you sort of, you know, you heavily rotated your starting 11. You know, Claire Wheeler got a rare start. I guess just what did you make of her performance, and do you think that, I guess, the way that you've selected your lineups has sort of led to the lack of chemistry that we saw in the first half?
Fair. I also think that the criticism was fair in the World Cup, but I said then and will say now that all coaches have different strategies. If you look statistically over time, there's some clubs and some coaches that works with a lot of game changes, early subs, a lot of subs during games. If you look at Bev in Canada, for example, it's a massive part of her coaching style to plan for subs and early subs and use the bench. If you look at Serena in England, it's completely opposite. Very, very few subs, and cohesion and connection is key for her. So there's nothing right and wrong, and I think I'm a coach that lean towards more consistency and cohesion and connection, and it's not about not trusting the one on the bench. It's more that I think connection and cohesion with some players. If you look at for example, Steph and Caitlin, that just have a natural instinct connection out there, or if you look at Brasso and Ellie that played forever in there. If you look at Kyra and Minnie, and even if you have players then on the bench like a Vine or a Wheeler or players that were in the World Cup. They can individually come in and give a lot of energy, maybe different quality, but it also means a different relationship. And in a national team, you have very, very little time to train chemistry because you have 2 to 3 training sessions. And if you rotate too much in trainings, it will also influence the preparation. So, and again, I'm happy to be criticized by that because I just want to be honest that that's part of my coaching philosophy, right or wrong. What I can say about Wheeler's performance today is I think it matched her training. She's been very, very good in training. So she started because she earned it. And she's been very good at the end of the season in Everton. I think she's been one of the best players, to be honest. So therefore, I think she deserved the start as well.